Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizengauzen. Today, October 30th, we have a packed episode. So, in today's episode, another massive shelling of Ukraine, an attempt to leave cities without electricity and heat, the exposure of Putin's big lie about the testing of the latest Russian weapon, and, of course, how things really happened. And was this weapon even real? Trump's tough response to Putin: the US will conduct its own nuclear tests. Meanwhile, in Russia, they're already choosing the first target for the nuclear Poseidon and want to sink England and Belgium. So, what happened next? The Kremlin suddenly made a sharp U-turn and announced that, as it turns out, the tests weren't nuclear at all. All this and more. Today's episode will feature many exposés, Putin's lies. If this is your first time on this channel, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Putin is once again launching a massive attack on Ukraine. Today, the targets were energy infrastructure facilities, the railway, and the gas transportation system. There have been hits on residential buildings and dormitories in Zaporizhzhia. Unfortunately, there have been casualties. He just won't give up on this idea: to leave Ukraine, or at least some major cities, without water, electricity, and heat in the winter. Last night, more than 650 drones were launched, and over 50 missiles were fired at Ukraine. As I already mentioned, dormitories in Zaporizhzhia were hit. As of now, at the time I'm recording this, there are 23 people injured, including 6 children. I wish a speedy recovery to those who were injured. Just so you understand, after each shelling, a map like this is published. Take a look at this map. Here, the path is marked in yellow. The routes of Shahed drones are shown in yellow, cruise missiles in red, Calibre missiles in green, and ballistic missiles in blue. But overall, just look at the sheer number of missiles and drones that were launched at Ukraine today, which is truly staggering. And all of this, forgive me for saying so, is simply in order to deliberately leave hospitals, kindergartens, schools, and residential buildings without essential electricity and heating, causing immense suffering to innocent civilians. There's just one thing I can't understand. What is Putin counting on? So, the power goes out somewhere. Does he think people will come out of their homes and say, "That's it, surrender, Zelensky, surrender"? What is he counting on? There's only one goal here: to make things worse, specifically for Ukrainians, whom, it seems to me, Putin just absolutely hates. Because they didn't give him the quick and victorious war he wanted as his crowning achievement. They didn't let him take control. It seems to me that Ukrainians are Putin's biggest miscalculation in his life. He expected that Russians would be greeted here with flowers, but instead they were met with weapons and cocktails, Molotov cocktails. And you can't turn back the meat grinder of history now. This will forever be a big, enormous and shameful war for Putin and Russia, one that he will ultimately lose. He has already lost it. The only thing left for him is to strike Ukrainian cities and threaten the whole world with nuclear weapons. By the way, speaking of nuclear intimidation, Putin's special envoy Dmitriev's visit to the US was a failure. Threats with the Burevestnik missile didn't impress anyone, so Putin decided to take matters into his own hands and made a second attempt. And this time, he decided to personally scare everyone with new nuclear weapons. To do this, he went to a military hospital in Moscow, gathered some fake wounded soldiers there, occupiers with faces unmarked by intelligence. By the way, pay attention to this, the photo. Let me remind you, this is a photo from a military hospital where the wounded are supposed to be lying down. That is, first of all, in this photo, apparently no one is actually wounded. Secondly, well, this is just their thing now. They are all selected by height so that they are shorter than Putin. Well, you just can't pick anyone taller. And also, it turns out, I learned this myself, that in a military hospital people walk around in uniform and military boots. And the most interesting thing is, this is where the Federal Protective Service's costume designer really failed. Look, they all have the exact same set of medals on their chests. Everyone, all of them have the same ones. Well, then Putin sat them down at the table and started talking about superweapons. Just like, Hitler once dreamed of superweapons too, thinking that his superweapon would save him. The Burevestnik missile, I'm quoting Putin here, is not only a breakthrough in strengthening Russia's defense capabilities, but also in science, Putin emphasized. According to him, the nuclear technologies used in the Burevestnik will be used in the lunar program and in the national economy. What lunar program? At this point, the Kremlin elder's brain is just fermenting with Botox. After this war, you won't just have no money for a lunar program. You won't even have any left for your Russia. Putin repeated this Burevestnik thing 100 times. By the way, I remembered he did the same thing when he was talking about the Oreshnik. He couldn't get through a sentence without shoving that Oreshnik in there. So where is that Oreshnik now? What happened to it? No one knows. And of course, you have to understand, it's just the presentation itself, the facts. Quoting Putin, the advantage of this Burevestnik is that its nuclear power unit is 1,000 times smaller than the one on a nuclear submarine. And the nuclear reactor installed in the Burevestnik starts up in just a few seconds. Well, nothing special, 1,000 times smaller, a nuclear reactor in just a few seconds. Listen, when he says this, it reminds me of that kid everyone had in their neighborhood who was always lying for no reason. Like, my dad has $1 billion. Or, my dad bought me a Rolls Royce, but I'm not allowed to take it out of the house onto the street. And also, my dad's best friend is Bruce Lee. He stayed over at our place last week, but you can't talk about it because ninjas are after him. You all had a kid like that in your neighborhood, right? That's Putin for you. Let me just remind you, Putin claimed that this missile, the Burevestnik, flew about 14,000 kilometers. The Norwegians stated that the missile was launched from the Novaya Zemlya archipelago. Alright, let's take a look at the Novaya Zemlya archipelago. Even if it flew across all of Russia to the other end. Even if it went to the Kuril Islands, that's only 5,000 kilometers. Where did it fly 14,000 kilometers? Where did it go? Even if it went there and back, if it flew along the entire coastline to the Chukchi Sea, it would be impossible not to detect it. And at the end of this segment, I'll tell you what the real numbers were and why Putin was lying outrageously. Something he seems to be best at, apparently. And now, here's the most interesting part. Fasten your seatbelts. And here is the real data. This Burevestnik missile really did exist. It was launched from the Novaya Zemlya archipelago. There's a little test site there, with the rather strange name of Matochkin Shar, and basically it launched from there, fell within the Kura test range, and covered 4,570 kilometers in 5 hours and 11 minutes. Well, some airplanes fly faster than that. No reverse radioactive trail was detected during the flight by the system stations RN-55, RS-34, or others. So, look, it flew 3 times less distance, and you know what experts say? That it was actually most likely just a Kh-101 missile with extended fuel tanks. Not nuclear at all. So basically, look, he lied a little. Not 14,000, but 4,000. It didn't fly for 15 hours, but 5. Not nuclear, just conventional. Well, but apart from that, it turns out he didn't lie about everything. Well, listen, I'm just amazed. Every time it lies to Putin, and even that wasn't enough. About the Burevestnik. He decided to throw in some fairy tales about Poseidon as well. It's just that when the mangy muskrat starts lying, you just can't stop her. And literally, by chance, right after the Burevestnik tests, they successfully tested Poseidon. It's a kind of nuclear torpedo, also with a nuclear power unit. In general, Putin stated that the power of Poseidon significantly exceeds the power of our most advanced intercontinental missile Sarmat, according to Putin. Really? And what is this most advanced, most powerful missile Sarmat? Here's another important point. Putin stated that Sarmat, it turns out, will soon be put on combat duty. He simply no longer remembers where and when he lied about what. On September 1st, 2023, the head of Roscosmos announced that Sarmat is already... In February 2024, Putin says that Sarmat is on combat duty. Officially, the missile was adopted into service in September 2023, and now he says that Sarmat will soon go on combat duty. So when was he lying? Back then or now? He claims to have tested everything, and everything is on combat duty for him. It's just magic. Some kind of magic. You know what's most interesting about this Sarmat missile? It only has one thing. There was only one successful test. Just one, a single one. In September of last year, they tested this Sarmat missile so successfully that it exploded in the silo, leaving a giant crater where the launch pad used to be. Now imagine if, at that same Plesetsk test site where this happened, a nuclear Sarmat had exploded right in the silo. Well, just imagine, Putin puts, say, 20 Sarmats on combat duty, each with only one successful test. One goes off. And 19 explode right on the ground. Can you imagine? Either in the ground or above the ground. Can you even imagine such a catastrophe?
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
In that case, I don't know, even the Cosmodrome, the Plesetsk Cosmodrome and Arkhangelsk, they probably wouldn't have fared well at all. There's also the little town of Mirny nearby. It would have become completely flat, not Mirny, peaceful, if a nuclear Sarmat had exploded. Sometimes, I get the impression that Putin, preparing for the afterlife, has decided to drag as many Russians there with him as possible. He's already killed over 1 million in the war. Just like the Egyptian pharaohs, or the Scythians, whose tombs contained servants, wives, concubines, and even horses, so that they would serve him in the next world. And it seems to me that's the kind of story he's come up with for himself. Or, by analogy, with the Qin dynasty, where the emperor had a terracotta army placed in his tomb. The logic was that the emperor should also have an army in the afterlife. So here I think it's the same thing. He's gathering an army of ghouls for himself for the afterlife. And the response didn't take long to arrive. Donald Trump steps onto the stage and instructs the Ministry of War, yes, that's what it's called now, to begin nuclear weapons testing on an equal footing with other countries. He wrote about this on his social media. According to him, this decision is connected to the testing programs of other countries. This process will begin immediately, said Donald Trump. Well, basically, he said that the US has more nuclear weapons than any other country. And now there won't be enough room for all of you. Better hide in the wheat fields, you mangy muskrat, as they say. Well, and now Putin simply won't be able to back out of this arms race. Do you see what he's doing? He's showing cartoons here about Poseidon and Sarmat. That's good, that's wonderful. He didn't study history well. Or rather, he studies it very selectively. Exorbitant defense spending, the so-called Star Wars, which the US imposed on the Soviet Union. This was one of the reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union. Of course, there was also the drop in prices. Oil prices, mistakes in the economy, huge debts, the lost war in Afghanistan, and Putin has all of this right now. He's been dragged into an arms race, he will have a lost war, he has enormous debts, a drop in oil prices, well here we'll need to work with the audits. In general, the lost war in Afghanistan back then was nothing compared to this war. Back then, the Soviet Union lost 15,000 killed. Here, he's already destroyed more than 1 million. In short, the Botoxed old man is confidently pushing Russia into the abyss. And friends, let me remind you about those who are defending Ukraine but need our help. We have almost finished raising funds for a vehicle with electronic warfare equipment for our UAV operators from the 117th Brigade. Right now, they are currently in Donetsk region, carrying out combat missions near Lyman and Serebryanka. Just the other day, they lost their last vehicle. A drone struck right on the roof where the electronic warfare system was. So now they're left without a vehicle. That's why rotation is difficult. It's hard to bring in supplies and hard to evacuate the soldiers. So let's help them out. Right now, they desperately need a vehicle with protection. We're just a little bit short. I think we'll be able to close this fundraiser today, for which we'll get a huge thank you. And of course, we always thank our defenders as well. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There's Mono, there's Private, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. I want to personally thank each and every one of you. You are simply incredible. And together we are a great force. By the way, if you don't have the payment details, there's a QR code right here. It also leads to the fundraiser. Remember yesterday I told you that Volodya from the 1st Medbat wrote to me and sent a video showing how they evacuated the soldier. Today he sent another video, but it's not for publication. But the details of evacuating wounded soldiers using evacuation vehicles, unmanned malls, which we raised funds for together, are incredible. Now, 2 of these evacuation vehicles are picking up our soldiers and saving lives, including those of medics. The details are simply astonishing. The video he sent me includes some background. They evacuated a soldier. He had been at his position with a wound for 30 days. There had been several attempts to get him out, but they didn't succeed, and this time it finally worked. He was evacuated with the help of the mall. A sergeant was with him who refused to leave him behind. He said, "I won't leave here until they get him out." And they were evacuating him literally from a village where Russians were already in the neighboring houses. They were sitting there, and there were intercepted communications from the Russians saying that some vehicle was humming and buzzing as if some cars had arrived and so on, but it was actually the mall evacuation vehicle. And in this video, when I watched it, you could see that this evacuation vehicle was attacked, including from the air. Dropped munitions, explosions happened right next to it. And yet, this mall still managed to evacuate, and thanks to its armored capsule, our defender was not harmed by those munitions dropped from drones. In general, the evacuation was successful, and honestly, when you watch something like this and realize that we were a part of it, it's just incredible. By the way, unmanned evacuation vehicles. The Thermite will soon be with the 101st Brigade. That's another fundraiser that we closed. Russia considers the idea of inviting it to a hearing in the US Congress on the issue of the abduction of Ukrainian children a provocation, said Russia's ambassador to the US, Darchiev. Look at what the evil, according to Russians, Russophobe Lindsey Graham, the senator, has come up with. He is pushing a bill to recognize Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. That's the US wording. Many people ask, why a sponsor and not a terrorist? So that's the wording used in the US. And in order for them to be recognized as such, Congress must hold hearings on the abduction of Ukrainian children, of whom, I remind you, according to various estimates, about 20,000 have been taken out of Ukraine. It was precisely for this that Putin received an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. So they decided to invite her. The ambassador, listen to how she responds, and he says this is a provocation. Generally, the Russians claim they're not guilty of anything, and so on. They don't like it. Of course, the topic is extremely painful, not only for Putin, but also for his Commissioner for Children's Rights, Lvova-Belova. In one of the previous episodes, I showed a truly horrifying video where this person is sitting. Maria Lvova-Belova, Putin's Commissioner for Children's Rights, and she is speaking on camera. She talks about how she stole a child from Mariupol, a Ukrainian child from Mariupol. That is, they supposedly took him into their family to adopt him, but she was just sitting there telling the story. Right there on camera, she tells the host, we brought this boy here, and he was so withdrawn. He read Ukrainian websites, he sang Ukrainian songs, and he said he loved Ukraine. And then she says an absolutely horrifying phrase, something had to be done about that. Completely sick, really. A sick country, sick people. Then they started to reprogram the child's mind, brainwashing him with Russian propaganda. And they openly admit themselves that they are stealing Ukrainian children. Well, this topic really makes them squirm, because after these hearings, the process of recognizing Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism could actually be set in motion. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You can do it right now. There's an urban legend that a boy subscribed his grandmother to this channel. She used to love Putin and thought he was a great leader. But after some time, after watching these videos, she suddenly realized that Putin is just an insecure, spiteful, 1.5 meter tall loser who also dyes his eyebrows with brown mascara. Leningrad. Subscribe yourself and subscribe your grandmothers and grandfathers too. And now, check out our segment. Tried to scare us, but something went wrong. As they say, why'd you chicken out, tough guy? The tests of the Burevestnik are not nuclear, Peskov stated. He expressed hope that this information had been properly communicated to Donald Trump. President Trump, in his statement, mentioned that other countries are conducting nuclear weapons tests. Until now, we were not aware that anyone was conducting such tests. If by this they mean the Burevestnik tests, then it is in no way nuclear, in no way whatsoever, Peskov said. Peskov also noted that the US is a sovereign country and Russia will act accordingly to the situation, and that the United States did not notify about any intention to test nuclear weapons. No, you misunderstood us completely. And do you remember how Medvedev got slammed by Trump just for hinting that someone could transfer nuclear weapons to Iran? That someone could give nuclear weapons to Iran? Do you remember that? They even made him apologize for it. I think after that he didn't leave his little dollhouse for a week and drowned his sorrows, from morning till night. Do you know what they typically broadcast on Russian state TV channels? Do you know what? So I was shown a video. One of the top Kremlin propagandists named Kiselyov came out and presented an entire television program about this Sarmat, showing cartoons and graphics again, how Sarmat will destroy everyone. I'm quoting, "No one is threatening anyone but," I'm quoting, "the British Isles are so small that one Sarmat missile is enough to sink them once and for all. It's just one launch and England is gone once and for all." Kiselyov stated, "As of today, this is the pinnacle of missile technology. This is one of the best missiles in the world." They simply forget that the United Kingdom has 220 nuclear warheads. And believe me, those were closely monitored to make sure they were in proper condition, and 4 nuclear submarines. In other words, that's more than enough to destroy all of Russia's major cities. And the idiots out in the swamps just forget that in a nuclear war, there are no winners. Let me also remind you that Russia still can't make an automatic transmission for a car. This is not a joke. They still can't make one. And also, when you talk about striking London, don't forget that the wives, mistresses, families, and children of Russian oligarchs close to Putin, for some reason, really love London and the real estate. That's where they keep their money, and their kids go to school there too. They run programs 24/7 about how they're going to destroy everyone around them with nuclear missiles. And then, in the very same program, at the end, they'll shout, "This is all Russophobia. Why us? Why don't you like Russia or Russians? What did we ever do to you? Really, what did we do? Well, yes, we show how we'll destroy the UK. But what did we do?" It's strange, by the way. What else? Kadyrov and Medvedev weren't let out of the cage. Kadyrov, I don't know, there's Poseidon or something. Don will defeat everyone. Well, Kadyrov, by the way, probably because of his education, actually thinks that Poseidon, the real god and lord of the seas and oceans, serves Putin. He probably still doesn't understand what kind of sorcery is inside a traffic light. How does this shaitan work? Is there something inside switching the colors? And Medvedev, by the way, is basically a torpedo with an alcohol-powered engine, and he's already commented on it. Medvedev called Poseidon a doomsday weapon and threatened with the disappearance, not of the UK this time, but of Belgium. And who offended him? Who from Belgium offended him? It was Belgium's defense minister, Theo Franken, who previously said that NATO would wipe Moscow off the face of the earth if Putin tried to use new weapons to attack Europe. And Medvedev wrote that Poseidon is a doomsday weapon. He added a lightning and skull emoji, just like kids love, first they fill out those little questionnaires about who they like. They fill all that out, and then they start writing things like this. He decided to destroy Belgium, but so far it's not Belgium that regularly disappears. Bottles of Finland from Medvedev's bar. Well, what definitely suits us is that Putin decided to try to intimidate Donald Trump with threats. Now he's definitely going to get it. Trump doesn't forgive things like that. And you friends, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. And let's help our soldiers. Right now they really need our help. The donation details are in the description of this video. Wishing us all a peaceful day, and glory to Ukraine.